Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. The Dodgy Truther sent me a video this morning of this is going to go in my 151st Journey series, as well as a separate standalone video on the backup channel. You know, my reaction to the Atlanta gathering. So he sent me a video, and they're doing the Brighter Minds scam where some guys, doing blindfold reading, and the whole thing. And I'm past all that stuff. But I did notice something. There was 3 videos up. I guess they had two different sections of the Atlanta seminar, and they have these 3-day things. I guess I don't know, 6 sittings maybe. I don't know what it is. And I scrolled through them. Dodgy started off, and I'm not listening to the talks because I can't do videos on it. Like if I can't do videos on it, I have no interest in it. Right. So only what I'm going to talk about here. But the clips of him talking and saying stupid stuff, and I copied the clip of the Brighter Minds thing that they already did during the first session. It looks like they did another one during the second session. Just for I don't know. I have in case it becomes of use later on. Like I'm keeping all the stuff, but I have no intention of putting it back up or making more videos about it because uh, it's pointless. The people who watch my videos, you guys, you all believe pretty much the same thing about Dodgy, or whatever it is. And the people who are into Dodgy, they're just, worthless and helpless and hopeless, so, which I'll get into in a moment. But I looked at, he said he hadn't been here for 9 years to America. He has property here. I think his kids are citizens of America. And now they're living in India after the debacle of his Medley pharmacy collapse and all that stuff, and not losing $110 million of investor money and just all of it. But he has, a house here. He built he was responsible for the ashram in Monroe, which, all these things. And he said he liked it better, in America. He said this one, to me personally. He said it, a number of different times, like I heard him talk about it. He liked being in America, how much easier it was to be in America than India, all these things. He lived here all this time. And, I don't know what's happened to the Molina Ashram. My brother said the building needed to be condemned. He brought a person in there that said all this stuff needs to be fixed. And the local Abiyasis in Atlanta who, got Fraudji to build that ashram there close to them, decided not to use it. And they didn't like it. They all have big houses with these huge basements, and they're preceptors, and they'd rather have sittings at their own house. And, I can understand why. They don't want to drive 2.5 hours to the ashram. They moved on the wrong side of Atlanta. Like they have these, nice neighborhoods in Atlanta, like any city, and, on the outskirts of town. And the Molina Ashram is like southwest of of Atlanta, and they moved like northeast, and so they added an extra hour and a half on their journey to the ashram. The ashram was strange like that. Like no one could really live in Molina. There's no jobs to be had, and everyone wanted to move around the ashram because there's one ashram with lands. There's a lot of these meditation centers. But then the Atlanta people decided that they wanted to sell that ashram, even though, my brother had said at Fraudji, they all had witnessed like he wilted physically from charging the ashram with energy. And the ashram had better energy than anything else in the American mission. People said good things about the Texas, whatever it was, retreat center, which people would go to, and they had sandwiches in the fridge, and you were supposed to almost like take a vow of silence and just meditate and, not have any devices or anything, and you would just be there for like 3 days meditating, writing in your diary and reading books and going on to like sabbatical. They have these like sanctuaries. There's one in the Himalayas. They already sold that. And Rob, the preceptor that contacted me, was very upset about them selling that. He really liked going there. So I don't know what the condition was there. I never went. But in terms of everything else, all the other ashrams I've been to, meditation centers, and Molina was so much, the condition was so much better. The energy that was there. Nice piece of land, and just, they're very peaceful. And my brother said that they need to, there was septic issues. The septic system was always an issue there. It would get overloaded when there was, 1,000 people there, and then it was underused all the rest of the year. There was water leaking down. They had a road going up a hill that was kind of dangerous. The road was starting to maybe erode and fall off the side of the mountain because it was a hill. They built on top of a hill. And the building was just, not up to code. And there's a lot of things there that needed to be fixed. And these guys were trying to, they had tried to sell the ashram, and then they had a deal, and Kamish nixed the deal. He said he was attached to it, which was kind of a weird thing. Like, they had a buyer, and they were about to sign the papers. They had trouble selling in the first place because the people in the town didn't want a treatment center there. There's some prejudice against the ashram because it's, rural Georgia, and nobody really knows what it's about, right? And so, the gatherings there were spectacular. It was just phenomenal. And Chargy would go there, or when there was like gatherings for, like, we would go there for the birthday celebration if you couldn't go to India, and there would be a good gathering there. And you could sleep at the premises. We used to have tents, outside, and, it wasn't the best facilities. And it wasn't the nicest building. Like, they built the building kind of on the fly. It was a cheaply built building, like almost like a, I would say a prefab house. And there was mold and stuff in there. It was just like it's humid, and like they had these big rooms with multiple bunk beds, and there wasn't good airflow in there when lots of people would sleep, so it was kind of gross. And so there was, issues with it. But my brother was, trying to get them to dump some money into it. And they were trying to sell it, and Kamish said no on the selling. But here they are celebrating at this other venue. And that other venue doesn't have the spiritual condition of the ashram. It's like some kind of Hindu temple tall thing or something. And whatever it is, it's not going to have the energy. I've been to gatherings like that, and the gatherings are good, but they're not like they are at ashrams. Because the energy isn't there. The ashram has a pristine energy, and it's been charged with this energy, the transmission. And so you could just see and feel the sort of, it's very stale, and, just by looking at the videos. And so I don't know why Atlanta, like why be Atlanta? Because, they could be in the middle of the country where people could fly from all, you're on the southeast coast. And so it's a long trip for people in California. And I don't know if he's going to go to California and have something over there. Or, there's population centers, a lot of people in Texas. There's various, whatever. So, but they had it in Atlanta. They had one in New York, near Dodgy. He has a house there. And I guess, I don't know if they had the Monroe Ashram, which is very small. Probably seats about 200 people. I don't know if they had it at a hotel or whatever, but, again, what I'm talking about here is there's no flow to this stuff anymore, right? And they're missing out. There's no ashrams now. They're, they're having gatherings at rented facilities, which is, it's a step backward. And the fact he hasn't been here for 9 years. So, of these I watched a little bit of the first batch, which I covered already, I think, here. Some of it's in the My Journey series. And, I had a reaction just because it's been 9 years since he's been here, and I was talking about the time he had been here, and he's kind of, he walked by me like he didn't know me, and there's all that stuff, right? I had just come back from India. And, I feel blessed that happened because, if there wasn't for the Brighter Minds scam and some of these other things, what if I was still part of this? And I was watching it, and it would just be excruciating because I couldn't really, it's like one of those things like I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't, there wasn't something substantial to hang your hat on, right? Like with my ex, I, knew our relationship was over, and I knew divorce was, imminent, but she was just disappeared from our lives. We weren't in contact. She was in America. Me and the kids were in India. And there's no way to resolve it. But then I found out she was with another guy. She was cheating on me, and the family, basically. And that made it so much easier. Like, that was a blessing. Because it put me out of my misery, right, with the whole thing. Like, it was, something like the Brighter Minds scam is that. him dissing Chargy the way he's dissed Chargy is that. And so I'm grateful for those things. Because if he was more slick with what he was doing, it'd be harder to quit. And if there's still some transmission and, whatever. But I looked at this one section, was the end of a sitting. And again, these half-hour sittings he gives, satsans. And they paraded all the preceptors up like it was a graduation. And as they came up, Daji gave them prasad. I made prasad with Chargy. Like I didn't make it. Like Chargy allowed me to participate in the prasad making when he made me a preceptor. And there was other people who were getting prasad. And prasad in India, Babaji's, prasad is food that's been charged spiritually. And you offer the food to God, and God, they partake on a spiritual level. And they can't eat it physically, but they charge it. And so it's supposed to have like spiritual energy in it. There's people named prasad, like it's a name people have. But it's this blessed food. And Babaji said you only want to take enough of it so that you can't excrete it out. So you take like a little pinch of it, right? And and usually with sweets. And when I was made a preceptor, he made prasad for me, and I brought it back to America, and I didn't have anybody to give it to. Like we had a group meditation, and some people started, and they were new. There's a guy that was from India. He was a practitioner already, but I was trying to give it to him, but they don't appreciate it because they don't know, right? But it was, I was there with Chargy and we made it, right? And I had it forever. Like I was eating little bits of it every once in a while. I think eventually I had to throw it out because it went bad because I had nowhere to give it or whatever, right? Maybe I brought it to a gathering and gave it out there. But it was something where you would give these sweets to somebody, and Chargy would make the prasad. So we sat there. Chargy said, "You want to make prasad?" And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." And I just had this epic sitting to be made a preceptor, and I was having reaction to why I was like, "Whoa, what was that?" kind of thing. And we went over and kneeled in front of the prasad, and we were supposed to be praying. Chargy was doing the heavy lifting. I was just participating in some way. And he offered it. Babaji said, I offer it to all the divine, souls, all the liberated souls, but Lalaji is only necessary. The Lalaji could make it, by himself, but all the souls would come and partake of it and charge the food. And then you'd give it out yourself, right? You would get this prasad and you would hand it out to everybody. And people would come and get it because they wanted it. Like, there's a celebration. So if you got married or you were made a preceptor, you had prasad. And you gave it out. And some people use like M&Ms. I mean, there's usually there's these Indian sweets that butter, and there's these sweets with butter and sugar and stuff in them. And so, they had these people in a line in a procession, and they were walking up on the dais, and Daji was giving them prasad. And it was something completely new, and it was weird. And there's a person reading the person's name like they had just graduated something. And they were all Indian. It was probably about 40 to 60 people. And I watched the whole thing, and it was just bizarre. And anybody who knows anything about Saj Marg knows that this is not appropriate, and it's weird. They're mostly older folks. And he had just made 60 preceptors. So he came to America, and he made 60 preceptors. There's one American white woman, and the rest were Indian. And she was older. She was probably 70. She looked old. I don't know who that person was. And everyone else was Indian, like I said. And it's just, one guy stopped and started talking to Daji. And you could tell Daji was like, he couldn't make the guy move. But there was other guys reading the people's names. And there's 8 people that now waiting are backed up on the stage. This guy decided for the opportunity to talk to Daji. And I'm wondering how much access he got to Daji when he was made a preceptor. Like he must have made these people in groups, no individual attention, and just looked almost shady, like kind of a preceptor factory kind of black belt. Everyone gets a black belt just if they pay the money, kind of thing. But you get your ass kicked because you don't know how to fight because you're not really a black belt. And so, I doubt I doubt everything Dodgy, but the preceptors, I don't think they're real preceptors. And, this thing where they're getting prasad and all of it. And if you were sitting in the audience and you'd known, everything that I've said about the ashram and the gatherings with Charji, I don't know how you could look at this and say this is okay. I don't know how you get over all these things and the brighter mind performance and the scam. And I got emailed this thing that's something called Hope. And it appears to be some sort of curriculum, and I think you have to pay for it. I think they're running it at the kind of ashram during Charji's birthday. And they have all these scams, all these things, these programs. And, they're just, they're bogus. And I think anybody, it's caused me to really question how many people felt what the gatherings were all about. Like there was like the energy there and the way you would feel and the ability to connect to God. And, it was like that was your real life when you got to go to these gatherings and ashrams and you were living like, on a different plane of existence. And then everything else was like, like you were kind of walking through life in some kind of stupor. And then you have these moments of like clarity and epiphany at these ashrams and things. And you would you'd rise to a higher level of consciousness. And they were so dynamic and so, every one of these gatherings, every one of these things that Chargy showed up to in America. And it was, I was like, for like 7-8 years, it was every year. And then going to India. And then going to the ashrams when there was these gatherings like Babaji's birthday or something, Chargy's birthday, when you couldn't go to India. And being a part of that, I did that a number of times. Like I went to the Molina Ashram, like like at least once a year, outside of the time that Chargy, maybe twice a year. And so like it was just amazing. And like this has been such a fall off. Like I can't imagine these people don't see it, but maybe they don't. Like maybe they never perceived it in the first place. They couldn't wait for Chargy to be dismissed. And I was thinking about how every year Chargy supporters die off. Like people who are Chargy people. Like most of them are older than me. And there's of course new people, younger people that are younger than me, younger than Dodgy. I think Dodgy's about, 10 years, 8 to 10 years older than me. And so, Dodgy doesn't have the best health. But, by the time Dodgy's gone, there'll be almost no Chargy supporters, and I don't know what there'll be in terms of Dodgy people. Of course, it's the whole system's now corrupted. But Chargy will be effectively erased because the people just die off. All the Babaji people would die off. People who were, had trouble accepting Chargy and, they're, Babaji people. And that was a much more smoother transition in terms of, Chargy was, like he just was so great. The Dodgy thing was a smoother transition, but like he's just in such a fall off on every level. There's so much stupidity. Every time he opens his mouth, you're like, how can you, look at this guy as a master because he's just a dope. And he makes these bad decisions. And it's just turned this thing into a carnival with the brighter mind scam and the procession of graduating preceptors thing and all these things that he's doing. He did an interview with that guy. There was a guy doing an interview, and he brought this guy in who was a poet, this sort of, street poetry. He's an African-American guy, and they had, like, his family were sitting in the front row, and they kept on showing his family. And, there's no other black people in the whole audience. Like, there used to be some black people with Chargy, but it was a definitely underrepresented demographic. And, it's just all Indian people. Like, there's very few people who are American. I don't see some of the older. Occasionally you see somebody like you recognize when they show you the crowd, but it's almost all Indians. And so it's been, I wonder if all these people, the Chargy people are just lost enthusiasm and they're not even coming to this gathering with Dodgy. Like, I don't even know what's going on, right? And don't care, but like they're not. But if you're not going to go to the gathering, then why pretend to be an Abhyasi anymore or whatever this heartfulness thing is, right? So the whole thing, it makes me question that, how many people actually saw it for what it was, and maybe almost nobody did. Like I just, I had these great conversations with people, and there's people who, did a lot more work and were more into it than I was. And they all seem to love the gatherings. But they've, you know, I don't know. There's no reason to speculate on it, but it's, it's obviously just a mess. But the transition has been complete, right? The whole thing is, it's taken place. It's not, it's happened. It's a fact. Fraudji has been more or less erased, and people have accepted it. Dodgy's running scams and, whatever he's doing, and the lack of transmission, and, this thing has happened. There's no reversing it. There's no real resistance. And the longer it goes, the more it is accepted, the more dodgy people come in, the more chargy people leave. And, it just becomes I don't even know what to call this thing, because it's almost too incompetent to be called a cult. It's definitely not a religion, because it's, it's just weird. It's like nothing anymore. Like there's nothing really to call it, right? The main pillars of the system, the transmission cleaning, have been eroded. They're pushing, yoga and new age healing and, this wellness stuff. And they've turned into for-profit and, and it's just, about trees and things. And, trees are great. Some of these other things are great, but they're not Parsaj Marg. You can get those things other places. And, or they should be things that, there's nothing wrong with the forest by heartfulness if it was just, a place where you could go walk or participate and volunteer while you're doing the transmission and cleaning, which is the main focal point, but that's all been lost. Anyway, let me check to see if there's anything in these videos before I wrap this one up. Okay, so I went and found a video of the Brighter Mind scam. There's one more video of a sitting. I'll look at that one too, just to wrap this thing up here. So he's being interviewed by this woman named Karen Chetretri. It's an Indian name, but she's a blonde American white woman. And apparently she had a show on CNN, so she was a host of some morning show on CNN, so she's a journalist in air quotes. And then there's some kind of maybe spiritual thing. She lives in Nepal now or something, I don't know. It's unimportant, but she's one of these people that's supposed to be legitimized dodgy and maybe into some of these Western practices, Eastern practices. And so she asked Dodgy about why you can only start when you're 15 years old to meditate, right? And so Dodgy says, well, the best time is conception, but no one knows when we conceive, and so, to start meditation. And so if it isn't then, you have to wait till you know what you're doing, which is when you're 15. And it used to be 18. And Dodgy said, Lology said, the best time is to start at conception, but if you don't pinpoint that moment, you can't start till 18. And Dodgy says it's 18. He goes, but kids grow up so much faster now and they know more about everything, so they can start at 15. And kids aren't, better off now, obviously. And so he said, I said at 15, like he just made a decision to go against Lology's and Babaji's original age. And he just said it right there in front of everybody. And they're going to all miss it, right? That he, was a decision he made. Like he didn't intercommune. Everything that Babaji decided, he intercommuned with Lology, and Lology told him what was up. And so Dodgy just changed it to 15, saying the kids are more advanced now, but of course they're not. Kids were much, there's been a degradation of the human system. And so the real reason that you weren't supposed to start till you're 18, and this was very clearly stated in numerous ways, that when you're a younger person, you need to focus on developing your material life. And if you become spiritual too young, you'll lose interest in material life. You won't want to be, you won't have a successful career or be married and things like this. And so there was Krishna, Charji's son, and he came to America and went to Syracuse University. And he felt like his spiritual progress had been stopped. So he wrote to Charji, who asked Babaji, and Babaji said, yeah, he's got to develop his life. He's not ready to embark on his spiritual journey yet. He can start the meditation at 18, but, as a younger age, you can't devote yourself to it the way that you can when you're older. You have to first establish your material wing. And so Dodgy just changed it to 50. And of course, there's no real transmission. There's such a fall off in the practice. I don't think these kids are in danger of losing interest in the material world because of, all this, all the above. And so Dodgy then segued into talking about the brighter mind scam. And he said, would you like to see it? And the woman goes, this wasn't planned, which means, the rest of the questions seem to be questions that, I mean, I didn't really look at much of the interview, but we've seen this before, that these questions are all handpicked, that there's collaboration between Dodgy's handlers and Dodgy himself and the interviewer. We've seen this over and over again. The interviewer has set questions that they're going to ask Dodgy, and he has either prior knowledge or she's given these questions. And the last one was about kids, and then Dodgy rolls out these Brighter Minds kids who have a bag full of balls and Rubik's Cubes and crap like that, right? And blindfolds. And they're just standing off stage, and she goes, this wasn't planned, but of course it was. And these kids come in, and they have a set performance. They do the exercises. And he says, first of all, oh, Karen, you should do this. And they'll make a pigeon out of you. Which is what you would say if you were going to do a scam, some sort of, flim-flam, magic trick kind of stuff. The word pigeon, just like the word Dodgy, is just, very telling. He's just doing it in plain sight. And I think he's too dopey to even know. I don't know. But either way, it's just right there. And they bring out a bunch of little kids, and they do all these exercises. They're supposed to balance the left and right hemisphere. And these exercises have been around for, when I was a kid. Like the Olympic athletes used to do these things. My brother actually told me some of these things as, ways to balance the hemispheres by doing things. It's nothing like that would make you smell colors. And so then they roll out these two older kids that were at the other scam thing. And one of the kids does, the ball trick where when he brings out these two women, one's an Asian woman and the other is an older Indian woman. And Dodgy whispers to the interviewer, Kieran, this Indian woman's the first Indian judge in America, which seems like a weird thing to be pointing out, right? And they're all waiting backstage to do this performance. And so, why point that out? This is not something Chargy would say. And he whispers it, and everyone can hear it because he has a microphone on. And, it's just, the whole thing's just so sketchy, right? And so, it's just all of it, the way they do all of it. And so the kid takes all this time with the ball, holding the ball, smelling the ball, turning the ball over. And then he says the color, right? And so he takes about 30 seconds to figure out what the color of one ball is. But then he solves a Rubik's Cube where he's not even touching or smelling the cube, and it's all various colors, right? You could say that you could smell colors as a scam, but then when you bring out Rubik's Cube, those colors are scrambled. So you'd have to touch each cube individually because the cubes on the corner have 3 colors on them, and multiple cubes have 2 colors. Only the cubes in the center have 1 color. And so you're going to have to be touching all sides of the cube all the time. But he's just solving the cube because the only way you could do it is if you could see the cube, right? You couldn't possibly touch or smell all the different colors. So it's a flaw in their scam. There's a lot of flaws in it. But it doesn't make any sense that he takes 30 seconds to smell a ball, and then he's flipping through this Rubik's Cube, not even touching or smelling it, and just solving it like he can see it, right? And so either you have a visual representation or not. And then the other kid does it, and he doesn't even have to touch the ball, and he can solve it. This kid's just better at it, right? But this kid can't solve a Rubik's Cube, so he doesn't do that. So it's just the whole thing's goofy, right? Like the other kid solves it, and he just says the ball that the women are holding. They put the blindfold on these women. And then they get this kid to read, and the judge gives him a business card. And he reads her business card with the blindfold on. And then the other woman gives him a credit card, and he holds it, and he goes, well, maybe we shouldn't do this. Maybe I shouldn't tell everyone your credit card Like the woman literally hands her credit card over for him to read the numbers and name and you know expiration, all this stuff. And, the kid's smart enough to realize, look at this dopey adult that stabbed me a credit card. They can't wait to give their money away to the scam, right? Just shows you how trusty these pigeons are. And so the whole thing's hilarious. Like I mean, I don't mind not making a video just because who's it for, right? But it would be great to just show you how bad it is. It doesn't make any sense. And the one kid said they play music, special music that stimulates their whatever, their minds, and then they put the blindfold on. They're able to do these enhanced activities. But it's just all a joke, right? It's just it's embarrassingly bad, and it's a scam. And so then it's over, and Dodgy does a meditation, and the whole thing, you know, I don't know how. And there's people in the audience going along and tapping their heads and rubbing their bellies and doing all the stupid stuff and giggling. And, some of them are taping it like it's a miracle. And just like there's no Gabiasis here. There's no critical thinkers. There's no spiritual people. They're just, I mean, some of them must doubt it, but they just don't care. And they've allowed Dodgy to run this thing into the ground. It's just embarrassing. Let me go look at the last video real quick and wrap this one up. Okay, so there was I guess like 32 or 33 minute sitting, maybe shorter. Dodgy comes in. There's not that many people in the hall. The hall's, there's empty people with the interview as well. So I don't know if the sitting happened after or before. It was put up after the interview. He was supposedly going to do a sitting after the interview, but that's not covered. It's not on a video. And so, it's got 10,000 views, and I don't know how many of those are fake. Probably, let me look at the thing here. There are 11 comments, right? All from Indian named people. Just all of it. Somebody wrote Namaste, and YouTube wants to translate it. Well, that's the Karen interview. So that got 23,000 views and only 11 comments. She is an ex-anchor for CNN. That's how they're billing her, but she looks like she's, married to a white guy. So I don't know where she got her name. And, seems to be maybe a stay-at-home mom. She's dyed her hair blonde. It used to be black or brown or something. And she now, like her claim to fame is she once was a CNN anchor. That was in 2007. And I don't know what she's done since then. She has a small social media presence. And so they bring these people in. They did it with this other woman I talked about, right? Where they roped her in with the Brighter Minds scam. And she was asking questions that were obviously there. So all of a sudden now they have 2 million subscribers. 2 million subscribers, and they're only getting 10,000 views on the meditation video, which of course will be more later when they buy this stuff, and 10 comments. And so, it's just like, I don't know how you can't, if I was someone who didn't know, about the Brighter, like they didn't do the Brighter Mind scam, and I didn't have to go through all the, the incompetence that I did with Dodgy. And I don't know how people couldn't, because I wasn't certainly, a person that had access to him. Like I had minimal contact with him. I had some, and, we knew each other. And pretty much all my contact was like, what the fuck, like what's going on here? This guy's a dope. Bad things that he did. And then him, backing my ex in the divorce and making bad decisions. And so let's say people didn't get any of that. But if they're just sitting in the audience, they must know there's been a huge fall off. Of course, now with the Brighter Mind scam, it's easier. But just all of it, like it's just not the same. It's way worse. And it doesn't seem like there's very many people there. It doesn't seem like there's very many Americans. It seems like it's all Indians. And a lot of the Chargy people seem to have left. I don't know. Like, I don't know what's happening. But it's, it's just a joke. Like, he's turned this thing into a joke. And I think that most people who had any real experience with Chargy have to be questioning this. But I don't even know. Like, I have no idea what they felt or perceived. Like, I don't know how they've accepted this. It's like so bad. It's such a fall off. Anyways, I felt like I had to take a look at this personally because it had been 9 years since Dodgy was here, and then all of it. and then I'll take a look at the Chargy birthday. But I mean, for me, it's like it's the people who know, and the people who have accepted him, and that's the majority of people, are just going to go along with it, and it's just going to have to run its course, right? He's effectively erased Chargy from the mission. He's effectively operated this scam where he's brought in all these things that are not supposed to be a part of Sajmark's system, and he's turned into a money making whatever it is, and like it's over, like it's already the any chance of any pushback, and he has all the power, and I mean, this is on Chargy and Babaji and everyone, because this is their guy, like this is the guy they picked. And like I said before, I don't think there was anybody who could have done anything differently, because the system was already corrupted. As Chargy left this planet, the people already had their claws into this system, and it was going to be corrupted one way or another. And so hopefully there'll be a bounce back, like I said, post-apocalyptic bounce back or something. But all the rest of the stuff is it's just performative, and people have their superstitious beliefs, and things that whatever their thing is, they come from India with their rituals and things. But in terms of, it was a real thing, like Chargy and the system was a real thing, and it really worked. And I've just lost any sense of I don't want to say purpose, but like it's just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is the way it's turned out kind of feeling, right? Like, it was a real thing. It was wonderful. And, I appreciated why it was here, and I can't believe they let it fall. Like, I don't know. I don't know what more to say about it, but like all these people I used to know, I thought many of them were into it more than I was. And they felt the real thing, and they were loving it. And yet, they've let it fall, right? They've let it, they've just given up. And, I guess it's just the way it's going to go. And like, I've accepted it to whatever extent. I'm grateful for, my, whatever I'm doing with the gratefulness meditation, these things, and my personal practice. But, in terms of like what I'm dealing with YouTube and, just all of it, like I just, there's a handful of people that are doing the gratefulness meditation to whatever degree they're able to do it. And, and I don't know. I'm not like depressed about it, but it's depressing, right? Like, it's just, all of it. Like, it seems like everything becomes pointless because, the human beings will always wreck everything. Like, that's how I feel. Like, human beings will always, degrade things. And again, we haven't hit the apocalypse yet. We haven't seen, some other phase of this system. And the transmission cleaning's still here, for now. So there's that. Anyways, only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramount, definitely points for the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.